Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, April 10th, 2025. House Republicans pass the version of the budget resolution that the Senate Republicans had passed, another step in enacting their and President Donald Trump's agenda. The House overcoming initial reluctance from some conservatives who said the Senate version did not cut federal spending enough. President Trump at a cabinet meeting talking about his tariff policies, saying there will be transition cost and transition problems, but I think we're in a very good shape. The Dow drops 1,000 points today. Elon Musk, head of the Department of Government Efficiency, attends the cabinet meeting, gives an update on expected savings from federal spending cuts this year. House passes a bill that requires proof of U.S. citizenship to vote. State Department talks about the release of a Russian-American ballerina convicted of treason for supporting Ukraine in a prisoner exchange with Russia. And a Senate committee holds a hearing on daylight saving time and whether the twice-a-year clock switching should end. From Politico, the House finally approved a budget Thursday, uncorking the filibuster skirting power Republicans need to build and enact President Donald Trump's dream bill along party lines this year. The final vote was 216 to 214, with two Republicans, Victoria Spartz of Indiana and Thomas Massie of Kentucky, joining all Democrats in voting no. In a significant win for President Trump and Republican leaders in Congress, and after days of suspense, dozens of Republican holdouts ultimately agreed to vote to clear the Senate-adopted blueprint after Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune publicly promised to seek at least $1.5 trillion in spending cuts to safety net programs in the final package. That was the article from Politico. House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke to reporters after the vote.
The big news today, of course, is that we passed the budget resolution. We adopted the Senate's amendments to the resolution, holding in place all of the commitments and the instructions, the guidelines that the House originally enacted. And that was a big step because that will allow us now to move forward to have our committees actually drafting the one big beautiful bill. There's a lot of work ahead of us, and we're really excited about that. In November, the American people delivered unified government to the Republican Party. They returned President Donald J. Trump to the White House. They gave us control of the House and the Senate, and we are going to make good by that. We have a big responsibility. In the budget reconciliation bill, the reason we call it the one big beautiful bill, everybody in this crowd of journalists knows that all the components that will be in that. We're talking about ensuring that the border is secure, having the resources that are necessary to do that. We're talking about getting the American economy going again by reducing regulations. We're talking about restoring peace through strength and making sure we have the measures in place to properly fund those priorities. We have a lot of things, American energy dominance, all the components that will make things better for Americans, drive down the cost of living, and get our economy really going again. And, of course, not the least of which, the big components of the one big beautiful bill is to ensure that we don't have the largest tax increase in U.S. history all at once, which is what would happen at the end of this year if we didn't accomplish this mission, because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the tax cuts from the first Trump administration, as we know, would expire. So a big day for us. We will now get the committees operating on all cylinders. They'll be working over the 2-week district work period that encompasses Passover and Easter. They'll take a couple of days off for those holy celebrations and then keep their sleeves rolled up and get right back to work. The committees in the Senate and the House will be working in a collaborative fashion. We've explained this, that this really is a one-team approach by Republicans in both chambers. I'm so grateful to Leader Thune and his steady hand of leadership. We had a joint press conference this morning making our commitments known of what we're going to try to do. And that is ensure real savings for the American people, because we have to do that. We have a responsibility to get our country back on a sound fiscal trajectory, and also make sure that we ensure and protect those essential programs. The Democrats, as I noted this morning, have said that we're going to gut Medicaid. It is not true. We're going to protect the benefits that everyone is legally entitled to. The beneficiaries who have a legal right to that, it will be preserved. Those are essential safety net programs that Republicans support. The President has made clear Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid will not take a hit. So you can count on that, and you can watch it develop as we go.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, speaking to reporters after today's House passage of the budget resolution. More from the Politico article. Speaker Johnson and the House Majority Leader Steve Scalise met privately with fiscal hawks past 10 p.m. Wednesday. after the GOP leaders canceled a vote on the fiscal framework earlier in the evening. Before that, House hardliners met privately with Senate Majority Leader John Thune about ensuring deeper spending cuts. Thune said, "I think at some point these guys just have to take yes for an answer." And in the end, the holdouts came on board. That was from the Politico article. Congressman Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, member of the Freedom Caucus, had originally been a no, and after the meetings today voted yes. He spoke to reporters as they all walked outside the U.S. Capitol.
We're talking to the senators who they're not committed to $1.5 trillion in spending cuts.
They better get committed. I mean, look, the Speaker made his commitment clear. The President made his commitment clear to the level of spending cuts necessary. And the White House is very clear that touching and addressing the waste, fraud, and abuse of Medicaid was critical to all of this. So I think we've unlocked the path to actually deliver something that will be fiscally responsible. But if it ends up being all tax cuts and no cuts, then it's not going to pass the House.
Congressman Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, walking and talking with reporters on the Capitol grounds. That question coming from CNN's Manu Raju, who posted the video. The Hill reporter Michael Schnell, writing on X, Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris, Republican of Maryland, tells me he's pleased by Senator Thune's comments, despite him stopping short of a firm commitment to $1.5 trillion in cuts. He said the first time publicly the Senate leader has come out and actually said that we're in the same ballpark with the House and Senate reductions. And Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, one of the two House Republicans that voted no today, posting on X, "If you were trying to hasten financial collapse of our country and bribe voters to go along with it, the strategy wouldn't look much different than what Congress is doing today. The big, beautiful bill cuts taxes while keeping spending on an increasingly unsustainable trajectory." All the Democrats who voted today on the budget resolution voted no, and the Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York held a news conference after.
Here in the Capitol, the battle lines with respect to Democratic values and Republican values have once again been clearly drawn. House and Senate Democrats are standing on the side of the American people, and we continue to be committed to building an economy that's affordable and that works for everyday Americans and drives down the high cost of living, while protecting health care, nutritional assistance, and the Social Security of the American people. Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans are doing everything they can to tank our economy, drive us toward a recession, and gut the health care of the American people by visiting upon them the largest Medicaid cut in history, along with the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history, all in service of enacting massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors like Elon Musk. It's a toxic scheme that they cannot hide from because it continues to be on full display on the House floor and on the Senate floor for the American people. The budget resolution that passed the House today will set in motion some of the most extreme cuts to health care, nutritional assistance, and the things that matter to everyday Americans in our nation's nearly 250-year history. It's a disgrace. This is just the beginning. And House Democrats are going to aggressively push back every day, every week, every month until we bury this reckless Republican budget resolution in the ground, never to rise again.
The House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, at a news conference. New York Times reporting on today's budget resolution vote in the House. The plan the Senate passed over the weekend directed committees in that chamber to find about $4 billion in spending cuts over a decade. That's a fraction of the $2 trillion in spending cuts that were approved by the House. And conservatives there feared that if they agreed to the Senate's measure, they would ultimately be forced to accept far smaller spending cuts than they want. The holdouts relented despite having failed to force any modifications to the measure. They agreed to support it after Speaker Johnson And Senator John Thune of South Dakota, the majority leader, said it was his conference's ambition to find at least $1.5 trillion in cuts. That was from the New York Times. Speaker Johnson and Senator Thune made a joint statement this morning before the House vote. Here is Senator Thune.
A lot of work been going on here the last few days, but what I can tell you is that I think, as you know, last week that there were 51 Senate Republicans that passed a budget resolution that seeks to accomplish all the things that the Speaker outlined. We are all aligned on the need to make the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent, to restore American energy dominance, to grow our economy, and to make a generational investment in our border security, and also make sure that we are ready militarily to deal with any of the threats that the country faces around the world. And those are all things that are addressed in this budget resolution, which is why it's really important that we act. The budget resolution, as you know, is the first step. It unlocks budget reconciliation, which is where all this can be achieved. But one of the principal objectives in our budget resolution and in the House's, as outlined by the Speaker, is spending cuts. We have got to do something to get the country on a more sustainable fiscal path, and that entails us taking a hard scrub of our government, figuring out where we can find those savings. And our ambition in the Senate is we are aligned with the House in terms of what their budget resolution outlined in terms of savings. The Speaker's talked about $1.5 trillion. We have a lot of United States senators who believe that is a minimum. And we're certainly going to do everything we can to be as aggressive as possible to see that we are serious about the matter, not only of making our federal government more fiscally sustainable, but also deficit reduction, which is critical to a lot of our members in the Senate, and I know to his members in the House. So we're ready to move forward. I'm hoping that the Speaker and his team and his House colleagues can succeed today, get the budget resolution passed, and that will set us up for the next step in this process, which enables us to achieve all the things on President Trump's agenda, including those I just outlined. But absolutely essential that we work really, really hard to see what we can do to make government smaller, more efficient, and more accountable to the American taxpayer.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune standing beside House Speaker Mike Johnson this morning before the House did pass the Senate version of the budget resolution, 216 to 214, the vote in the House. It's another step towards enacting the Republican agenda of the majority in Congress and President Trump. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, held his own news conference today on what the House did.
A few moments ago, House Republicans plowed ahead on a morally and financially bankrupt plan to gut Medicaid while cutting taxes for billionaires. Republicans did just what their boss told them to do. They closed their eyes and voted for a bill knowing damn well it will explode the deficit by $52 trillion and kick millions off health care. They voted it knowing damn well that American families lose and billionaires win. They voted for it knowing damn well it would gut critical investments for the American people. They voted for it knowing damn well it would mortgage our nation's future to deliver massive giveaways to the wealthiest Americans in the country. Republicans incinerated any credibility that remained about them supposedly being the party of fiscal responsibility. Last week, we sounded the alarm about how the Republican budget resolution was the definition of wasteful spending. $37 trillion, or so we thought of the national debt. I say, or so we thought, because this morning we have discovered it's even worse than we feared. This morning, the Congressional Budget Office, at Jeff's request, released a new projection showing Republicans' billionaire tax giveaways will actually add $52 trillion to the debt, not just 37 plus. It's gotten even worse, even worse. Why? Because Republicans in the Senate didn't just copy and paste the 2017 Trump tax bill. They added over $1 trillion more. This is the Trump's tax scam on steroids. And it's going to bankrupt America, all so they can give these tax breaks to the billionaires. It is just incredible.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, at a news conference on Capitol Hill. After the House passed the budget resolution, the Senate passed version, President Trump writing on Truth Social, congratulations to the House on the passage of a bill that sets the stage for one of the greatest and most important signings in the history of our country. Among many other things, it will be the largest tax and regulation cuts ever contemplated. Make America Great Again. And at the White House, during a cabinet meeting, Russell Vought, director of the Office of Management and Budget, spoke about it, and then President Trump commented.
Very thankful for the House voting for the President's budget resolution along with the Senate bill. Made a ton of progress this week in working with members to ensure that a desire for flexibility in the Senate was not misconstrued as a desire not to slow and do spending reforms. And so we're very thankful for that. And now we can get after writing that bill, getting the President as big a package of his agenda to his desk. So very good week.
We just got the House vote, and now we're well on our way to getting, as we call it, the great big beautiful bill. It's a beauty. There's never been a bill like this one. We're trying to get it all into one beautiful bill. It's tax cuts, regulation cuts, and many other things. The border, a lot of money for the border, where you're doing a fantastic job. So, but we just got a report that we, as you know, you knew before us. Were you surprised we got the vote? Got the vote. And we're happy to get the vote. So I think we're going to be in very good shape.
President Donald Trump during a White House cabinet meeting. You also heard from the OMB director, Russell Vought. Wall Street today, the Dow down 1,014, NASDAQ down 737, S&P down 188. NBC News writes stocks returned to their downward trajectory today after a brief surge following President Donald Trump's announcement of a 90-day reduction on tariffs for more than 75 trading partners that had refrained from retaliating over his sweeping duties. A base tariff of 10% will remain on most U.S. trading partners, however. NBC also writes the European Union said it was pausing its own countermeasures to try to work things out with the Trump administration, while China has doubled down on its retaliatory duties and bellicose language. And China, which placed steep retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, will now come under an even larger hike in levies on its products, totaling 145%. That was from NBC News. President Trump opened his cabinet meeting at the White House talking about the economy, tariffs, and the stock market.
We had a very good meeting. We're talking about a lot of different things. Consumer prices have actually dropped. There's very little inflation. Everybody predicted a lot of inflation, very little inflation. Energy costs are down. Interest rates are probably down. They scatter, but they're probably down. Prescription drug prices are even to down. We're doing very well. It's been amazing. We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. So we're very, very happy with the way the country's running. We're trying to get the world to treat us fairly. This is something that should have been done 25 years ago, and it wasn't. Should have been done 40 years ago, and it wasn't. But no president was willing to take it on. But you had to. It's not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. And as you know, without a lot of money being added, which is a lot of money that we could add, the country is making approximately $2 billion a day. And when you think of it, we've never done that before. Never come close to it. And the number is probably $3.5 billion a day. And that makes us a very strong country. But we have Scott here and Howard and some of the people that are working on deals. And the biggest problem they have is they don't have enough time in the day. Everybody wants to come and make a deal. And we're working with a lot of different countries. And it's all going to work out very well. I think it's going to work out really very well.
President Donald Trump at the White House cabinet meeting today. He mentioned inflation. Wall Street Journal writes that consumer prices declined month over month in March for the first time in nearly 5 years, a welcome development for inflation-weary families, but one that economists said is likely to be short-lived due to new trade tariffs. The consumer price index fell a seasonally adjusted 0.1% in March, the department said Thursday. First time it recorded a month-over-month decline since May 2020. That was from the Wall Street Journal. South China Morning Post writes that China is planning to reduce the number of U.S. films shown in the country as part of its retaliation against U.S. President Donald Trump's heavy tariffs on the country, the China Film Administration said on Thursday. They said the U.S. government's erroneous practice of imposing excessive tariffs on China is likely to further diminish the Chinese audience's favorable perception of American films. Again, from the South China Morning Post, President Trump was asked about this.
President, China retaliated today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction to them now targeting cultural exports from the United States?
I think I've heard of worse things than Yes, please.
President Trump, during his White House cabinet meeting, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick at the meeting saying again today that over 75 countries are looking for negotiations with the U.S. to reduce tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. Also, the president asked and did not rule out the possibility of extending the 90-day pause he placed on his reciprocal tariffs yesterday. From Fox News, the White House slammed Democrats for playing partisan games and calling for an investigation into alleged insider trading after President Donald Trump paused customized reciprocal tariffs for 90 days on Wednesday. It is the responsibility of the President of the United States to assure the markets and Americans about their economic security in the face of nonstop media fear-mongering. Democrats railed against China's cheating for decades, and now they're playing partisan games instead of celebrating President Trump's decisive action yesterday to finally corner China. White House spokesman Kush Desai said in comments to Fox Digital when asked about Democrats claiming President Trump manipulated the market. That was from Fox News. Tariffs were a topic at today's U.S. Senate Finance Committee hearing with William Kimmett nominated for Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade. These questions from the ranking Democrat on the committee, Ron Wyden of Oregon.
More trade chaos this morning, Mr. Kimmett. We've been looking at the financial indexes this morning, and it looks like the only one that is really up is volatility. And this lack of certainty and predictability is taking an enormous toll on our country and on the economic situation. I think you heard me say if you were to go back a couple of months, nobody would have thought that having a 125% tariff on imports from China, 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, a 10% global tariff, and additional tariffs on aluminum, steel, and cars was somehow a good start in terms of trade policies. So what I would like to ask you to start with is what's the plan to provide relief now for the small businesses who have to decide between paying tariffs and keeping staff? Because that's what's going on right now. And they want to know what's being done to get them some relief now. And certainly there was a lot of fanfare yesterday, but I told you how markets responded this morning. I looked at the charts and there's just a sea of red everywhere. So what's the plan to provide relief to all these people hurting?
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member Wyden. I think it's important to understand where we were as a country when President Trump took office, and we were faced with an unprecedented $1.2 trillion trade deficit.
My time is short, and what I'd like to do is get an answer to the question of what's being done to provide relief to people hurting now.
Thank you. And respectfully, I think the relief is already on its way. If you look this morning, inflation was down, consumer price index was down, prices are coming down.
I just told you what the charts look like, and it's red ink everywhere. You're saying that's not the case? What I looked at is not representative of what's going on?
I certainly am aware there's been some volatility in the markets. I just don't think that's a fair metric by which to judge the president's trade agenda.
Well, let's look at the others. The 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, 10% global tariff, additional tariffs on aluminum, steel, and cars. Are those good good thing to talk to the American people about? Because all I hear is that's generating more uncertainty, lack of predictability, and now for the next 90 days, you got all these people basically hanging out there in a state of suspended animation when they want certainty and predictability, 1 and 2, and relief now. So tell me how you're going to do that.
Thank you, Ranking Member Wyden. I think the President has been clear that if you build in the United States, there are no tariffs, and if you source in the United States. And so I think if you look at the issues that were taken, we as a country have been the victims of non-reciprocal trade balances for decades, and the President has taken strong and decisive action to address those issues. And as I said, the inflation was announced this morning is down, prices are down, and I think it's too early to judge the effects of the President's trade agenda.
I don't see anybody saying that this is real relief, and that's what I hear my constituents. I'll be having town hall meetings over the next couple of weeks, and I'm telling you, the question I'm asking you is what they're asking their elected officials, and I want the record to note that I didn't get an answer.
Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, Finance Committee ranking member, questioning William Kimmett, nominated for Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade. This is Washington Today. Associated Press writes that U.S. egg prices increased again last month to reach a new record high of $6.23 per dozen, despite President Donald Trump's prediction. A drop in wholesale prices and no egg farms having bird flu outbreaks. The increase reported Thursday in the Consumer Price Index means consumers and businesses that rely on eggs might not get much intermediate relief. Demand for eggs is typically elevated until after Easter, which falls on April 20th. Industry experts were expecting the index to reflect a drop in retail egg prices because wholesale egg prices dropped significantly in March. That was from Associated Press. Reporters asked the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, about this in the White House driveway.
Egg prices, too, wouldn't mind just weighing in. What do you say to American consumers? The wholesale prices are down, but we're still not seeing it at the grocery store.
Well, so today, I think it was today, maybe in the last hour or so, we saw inflation decrease just a little bit, but a decrease for the first time since COVID. And that's an incredible story to tell. The president's idea of tax cuts and deregulation and tariff reorganization and realignment of the economy, the markets are beginning to adjust to that. We're seeing a decrease in airfare, a decrease in used cars, a decrease in gasoline. The wholesale prices of eggs, to your question, have gone way down. I think we're down, depending on who you're looking at, what numbers, between 50 and 65%. We've said all along the retail prices will just take a while to catch up. We're also moving into the Super Bowl of eggs, which is Easter. So from the beginning, I've said this is sort of the high price for retail for eggs, but we feel very confident that will continue to come back down.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins talking with reporters in the White House driveway today. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said today the outbreak of highly contagious measles in the U.S. is under control, and although the number of U.S. cases is more than double what was reported all of last year, it's far less than what Europe is going through. And Secretary Kennedy said there are other public health concerns that deserve media attention, such as chronic disease.
The CDC has done an amazing job at getting the measles outbreak under control. We have about 680 cases now in 22 states, compared to the same outbreak in Europe, which is 127,000 cases and 37 deaths. Our numbers in this country have now plateaued. And I want to thank CDC for that. And we're trying to refocus the press. We've had 3 measles deaths in this country over 20 years. And we're trying to refocus the press to get them to pay attention to the chronic disease epidemic as you've asked us to. We have now 38% of American youth are pre-diabetic. This was unknown 30 years ago. Every child that becomes diabetic, there should be a headline about them. We have 100 million adults who are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And we have, we have now, the autism rates have gone from now most recent numbers we think are going to be about 1 in 31, 1 in 12, so they're going up again.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at today's White House cabinet meeting Also during that meeting, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, said the National Archives would be releasing files related to the 1968 assassinations of then presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy, the secretary's father, and civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. within the next few days. This follows the release last month of documents related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea. It's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. A few more headlines. The Senate voted to repeal a Biden-era rule on energy efficiency standards for gas-fired water heaters, 53-44. Democratic Senator John Ossoff of Georgia joining all Republicans in voting yes. The House had passed this joint disapproval resolution in February, so the bill now heads to President Trump, who plans to sign it into law. And several members of Congress were on an American Airlines plane at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport when its wing was clipped by another American Airlines plane. FAA says it is investigating. One of those members of Congress, Josh Gottheimer, Democrat of New Jersey, posting on X, while waiting to take off on the runway at DCA just now, another plane struck our wing. Thankfully, everyone is safe. Just a reminder, recent cuts to the FAA weaken our skies and public safety. Story from Reuters. Billionaire Elon Musk said at a White House cabinet meeting on Thursday he expects $150 billion in savings in fiscal year 2026 from the work done by the Dept of Government Efficiency. In March, Musk had said he was confident Doge could find $1 trillion in savings. That was from the Reuters article. Here's Elon Musk at the cabinet meeting.
Well, thanks to your fantastic leadership, this amazing cabinet, and the very talented Doge team, I'm excited to announce that we anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. And I mean, and some of it is just absurd, like people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet. I mean, I think anyone can appreciate whether, I mean, come on, that's just crazy. You know, some of these things, people ask me like, well, how are you going to find waste and fraud in the government? I'm like, well, actually just go in any direction. That's how you find it. It's very common. it's as the military would say, target-rich environment. So I think we're doing a lot of good in excellent collaboration with the cabinet to achieve these savings, and it will actually result in better services for the American people, and that we're going to be spending their tax dollars in a way that is sensible and fair and good.
And your people are fantastic. In fact, hopefully they'll stay around for the long haul. We'd like to keep as many as we can. They're great, smart, sharp, right? Finding things that nobody would have thought of. Very computer savvy.
Yes. We're working with hard to get the Trump Gold Card operational, hopefully in the next week or so.
That'll be very exciting. It's
really exciting.
That's a pathway to citizenship into the United States.
It's a big deal.
Yep, it's a big deal. Thank you very much. Great job you're doing.
President Donald Trump at the White House cabinet meeting hearing from Elon Musk, leader of Doge, the Dept of Government Efficiency. Story from Axios on Wednesday. A group of House Democrats is launching a concerted campaign to force Elon Musk out of the Trump administration by May 30th, Axios has learned. The effort is hinged on a legal requirement that special government employees, the designation given to Musk as he leads Doge, not serve past 130 days. 77 House Democrats wrote a letter to President Trump saying that Musk would not be allowed to return as a special government employee for a year, quote, without divesting from his companies, including Tesla and SpaceX. Some of the reporting from Axios on Wednesday. Today, those House Democrats who signed the letter held a news conference led by Greg Casar of Texas, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
50 days from today, Donald Trump must, by law,
fire Elon Musk. Last night, 76 House Democrats sent a clear message to President Trump. The clock is ticking. Since the beginning of this administration, Trump and Musk have exploited Musk's designation as a so-called special government employee to allow Musk to receive over $8 million a day in federal government contracts and subsidies while ignoring our conflict of interest rules and while funneling more and more money to himself and to his companies. But the law is crystal clear. A special government employee like Musk must leave the federal government after 130 days. That means that Musk must leave office by May 30th. That means that 50 days from today, Donald Trump must fire Musk. 50 days from today, Musk's reign of terror must end. And that day cannot come soon enough. We would be here for hours if I tried to recount every single one of Musk's illegal actions or abuses or attacks on working Americans, but let me give you just a few. In his 80 days in power, Elon Musk has fired more veterans from the federal government than anyone else in history. Elon Musk has fired independent watchdogs that were investigating his own companies for corruption and for breaking the law. Elon Musk called Social Security a Ponzi scheme, tried to shut down the phone lines that seniors use to get their checks. They degraded the system so much that we were being warned that it was on the verge of crashing and collapse. Elon Musk demanded access to Americans' most sensitive and private medical records and tax information. Elon Musk tried to steer billions of dollars of government contracts towards his own companies while already collecting $8 million a day from the federal government. Elon Musk fired nuclear safety workers, air traffic controllers, and people trying to combat ongoing disease outbreaks. This must end. If we're up to the American people, I think Elon Musk would be fired tomorrow. But a typical government employee would have been gone weeks and weeks ago. A typical government employee would have been held accountable for these crimes and for this corruption. But Musk relies on his so-called special government employee status. That gravy train runs out in 50 days.
Congressman Greg Casar, a Democrat from Texas, chair of the Progressive Caucus, with other House Democrats at a news conference today on Capitol Hill. A Washington Examiner article this week says that the position of the special government employee was established by Congress in 1962 to facilitate the hiring of non-government workers for consultative and analytical roles without them being confined to the restrictive rules and regulations required for regular federal government employees. The article also notes that SGE duties were typically not meant to last more than 130 days during a one-year period, but still a 2016 Government Accountability Office report revealed that possible exceptions can legally be made to extend employment under the SGE title, reporting from the Washington Examiner. The House passed a controversial bill on Thursday, begins a CBS News article, that would require Americans to show proof of citizenship in person to register to vote in federal elections, which critics say could disenfranchise millions of eligible voters. 4 Democrats joined all Republicans to pass the measure in a 220 to 208 vote. The bill, titled the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, would require applicants to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, such as a valid passport, a birth certificate, or other forms of ID that show a person is a U.S. citizen. That was from CBS News. Here's some of the House floor debate. Congresswoman Laurel Lee, Republican of Florida, speaking in favor.
The SAVE Act is an important step forward that will ensure elections are more secure and accurate across the United States. The vast majority of Americans agree that only U.S. citizens should have the right to vote in our elections. Just last month, President Trump took a strong stance, reaffirming his commitment to the integrity of our elections. The president's executive order will help equip elections officials with better data and more resources to administer elections. Today, Congress has the opportunity to build on this momentum and ensure that these protections are part of our laws, that every state can follow these practices, and that voters across the nation can feel confident in the integrity and the security of their elections. Congress must commit to supporting elections officials and voters by making voting accessible and secure. While states are the primary authority on how elections are conducted on Election Day, it is our role here in Congress to ensure that we support them and provide resources to them and to promote uniformity and best practices across the country. One way that we will be able to help provide those resources to states is by passing the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act will help protect our elections and ensure that only American citizens are casting ballots in American elections. The bill will support state and local elections officials by providing them with data and tools to help verify the accuracy and completeness of their voter rolls. As Florida's former Secretary of State and Chief Elections Officials, I got to work with state and local elections workers across the country and saw their commitment to ensuring strong elections.
Congresswoman Laura Lee, Republican of Florida, on the House floor. Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, Democrat of Oregon, opposed this bill.
This bill will make it more difficult to register to vote, and it will prevent millions of American citizens, including married women who change their name, and rural Americans, from exercising their right to vote. It creates an enormous and expensive unfunded mandate on election offices, and for what? Federal law already requires people to attest under penalty of perjury that they are U.S. citizens when they register to vote. Non-citizens attempting to register to vote is exceedingly rare, and if they do, they face severe consequences, including fines up to 5 years in prison and deportation. Mr. Speaker, more than 140 million Americans do not have a passport. Approximately 70 million women do not have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name. And millions of rural voters would have to travel long distances to try to register to vote. We don't have to guess what would happen if this bill were to pass. In 2011, Kansas had a proof of citizenship requirement that actually prevented more than 30,000, can I have extra 15 seconds?
Would you extend the gentlelady 15 more seconds, Mr.
The
Speaker?
gentleman's extended.
Thank
the
you.
gentlewoman from
In Kansas,
Oregon,
more than
15
30,000 U.S. citizens, 12% of everyone seeking to register to vote, were barred from voting. Other states have tried, and in all of them, significant number of citizens have been wrongly barred from voting. It's unacceptable, it's voter suppression, and it's wrong. I urge all of my colleagues to vote no on the SAVE Act, and I yield back the balance of my
Gentlewoman's
time.
time has expired.
Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, Democrat from Oregon, on the House floor before the House voted to pass this bill and send it to the Senate. The vote was 220 to 208. 4 House Democrats joining Republicans in voting yes. Ed Case of Hawaii, Henry Cuellar of Texas, Dan Golden of Maine, and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez of Washington State. From Associated Press, Moscow freed a Russian-American convicted of treason in exchange for a Russian-German man jailed on smuggling charges in the U.S. A prisoner swap that was completed Thursday as the two countries met to repair ties. They released the young ballerina, and she is now out, and that was good, so we appreciate that, President Donald Trump said of Ksenia Karelina, who was expected to arrive back in the U.S. on Thursday evening. She was arrested in February 2024 and convicted of treason on charges stemming from a donation of about $52 to a charity aiding Ukraine. U.S. authorities have called the case absolutely ludicrous. That was from AP. The State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce talked about this case at her news conference.
We are pleased to share that American Ksenia Karelina is on her way back to the United States. Ksenia was detained in Russia for more than a year and will soon be reunited with her loved ones. We have not forgotten about all of those who Russia continues to unjustly detain, including American Stephen Hubbard. President Trump's team, at his request, engaged with Russia on Ksenia's case. Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, CIA Director Ratcliffe, National Security Advisor Waltz, and Special Envoy Bowler mobilized their teams to bring her home. We thank the government of the UAE for their support at enabling the exchange. President Trump and Secretary Rubio will continue to work for the release of all unjustly detained Americans.
State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce. Congressman Greg Meeks, Democrat of New York, Foreign Affairs Committee ranking member, writing on X, thrilled that Ksenia Karelina, wrongly detained in Russia for a modest donation to support the Ukrainian people, is on her way home to the U.S. I'm grateful for the dedicated public servants who work every day to bring Americans home. Tammy Bruce at the State Department also asked about this news from NBC. The U.S. ambassador to Ukraine is stepping down from her post after nearly 3 years in Kyiv amid uncertainty over the Trump administration's attempts to broker a peace deal to end the Russia-Ukraine war. State Department said Thursday that Bridget Brink will be leaving her post in the near future, although it was not immediately clear exactly when she would depart. Brink assumed the post under former President Joe Biden's administration and has been a staunch advocate for U.S. military assistance to Ukraine. That's reporting from NBC News. Here is Tammy Bruce at the State Department.
Ambassador Brink's been ambassador at the embassy in Ukraine for 3 years, during a time of war for those 3 years. An extraordinary performance there, and we wish her well. At the same time, of course, it's a reminder when it comes to the issues that we think about that surround this conversation, is that we know that we're working for that war to end. And that is our focus, and we expect, of course, our work that will continue in that regard. But that's the nature of what we're focusing on here, and we wish her well, and that's really all we would say in that regard.
State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce at her news conference. And as for the meetings today between the U.S. and Russian delegations, Reuters reporting from Istanbul, the U.S. and Russia both said on Thursday they had made progress towards normalizing the work of their diplomatic missions, while the U.S. said it was still concerned about a Russian policy prohibiting the employment of local staff. And finally, on Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio, this from CBS News, a Senate committee heard from several experts Thursday on setting a year-round time standard instead of switching back and forth with daylight saving time. President Trump recently called it a 50-50 issue, but he previously vowed to get rid of daylight saving. At the hearing, the committee's chairman, Senator Ted Cruz, said there is a general consensus among his colleagues that the system of switching the clocks needs to be changed, but he said there was disagreement about whether to adopt Universal Standard Time or Daylight Saving Time. That was reporting from CBS News. Here's part of the hearing. Senator Cruz questioning witnesses Scott Yates, founder of Lock the Clock movement, Jay Caron, who's CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association, and Dr. Karen Johnson, a neurology professor.
Look, this hearing was important, and I wanted to hear all this testimony because I personally struggle with the two choices here, because it's a question of what do you care about more, sunshine and joy and fun and money, or health, mental health, physical health, and the honest answer for most people is, gosh, I care about all that stuff. So that's not an easy trade-off. The alternative that has been suggested is let each state make that decision. And I guess it's been pointed out that Senator Scott's bill does a version of that by picking daylight savings times, but then letting states opt out. Let me ask, as a practical matter, does that work? Functionally, how confusing is that, having everyone pick different times? How does that work for commerce, for life, for knowing what the hell time it is? Let me have each of you answer that.
Senator Cruz, thank you for that. The one little part of Senator Markey's history about when they changed the time in November was that the proposal was to move daylight saving time to finish at the end of November, and the airlines came back and said, no, we don't want a time change in the middle of our busiest travel season. And so they were going to scrap that, and then they got the extra week to put it in. So time is always complicated, and the system that we have, the system that we have is complicated, but it's complicated because it is a human creation, right? The sun moving around the earth doesn't actually have anything to do with time. Time is the agreement that we have about what 10 o'clock means, because we don't want to go around saying, the committee hearing will start when the sun is 2 hands above the horizon. We need this system. But the system has this bug right now, and the bug is daylight saving time. It's the switching of the clocks. And so if we have a little bit of time, a couple of years, so that the individual states can address all of these complexities and make those decisions, then we will be able to get rid of this bug permanently. It's something that we've been stuck with since World War I, and this is our opportunity to finally fix it.
Mr. Caron?
I'm not going to say that government solutions cause more confusion, but
you can imagine in this scenario that Florida is on daylight saving time, Georgia right above it's on standard, South Carolina is on daylight, et cetera, in the same spot because maybe special interests of all kinds made that happen. So I already have problems remembering which state is in which time zone as it is right now, sometimes the border states. To add to that, oh, they're in central and they're on standard. Oh, what time is it there exactly? So I can see where this causes more confusion. Wish I had a better answer for you on that one, but could we adjust and figure that out quickly? I don't know. I see it as problematic, but it may be the only way to thread the needle.
Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I think, the economy, the transportation industry certainly needs consistency and alignment. So we want to make this change once. We don't want to pick something that's tried and been failed twice before, such that we spend lots of money fixing it again in a few years. You mentioned the economy, which again, is so important. And, the majority of our workers start work early. The average work start time is 7:55 in the morning. So we'd be forcing people all winter to go to work in the dark, really affecting their productivity and economics. And so while, certain businesses are going to have different, benefits of the sun, I actually do want to give sun to people when they use it to get up, when they use it to be healthy, when they use it to be more productive and efficient at work, and to improve the overall economy, not just niche, businesses like the golf industry that have shown they can be very successful in standard time, like in Arizona.
Dr. Karen Johnson, neurology professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, testifying before the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. You also heard from Scott Yates, founder of Lock the Clock Movement, and Jay Karen with the National Golf Course Owners Association. Chair of the committee, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, asking the questions. The hearing was titled, "If I Could Turn Back Time, Should We Lock the Clock?" Again, from the CBS News article, the twice-yearly time changes are generally unpopular among Americans, with 63% saying they would like to eliminate them completely compared to just 16% who said they would not, according to an Economist YouGov poll in November 2021. You can find the video of that hearing in its entirety at cspan.org. And thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.